that the Quran talks about facts. Why does the Quran talks about facts of this world, the existence around us? Because the Quran is inviting the intelligent humans to believe. So, what is the basis of that presentation? How does the Quran invite people to believe? Well, the answer is the Quran refers to the phenomena of the nature. You read the Quran and you'll see that the Quran is telling us, don't you see? Don't you hear? Don't you ponder, reflect? Don't you understand? Tell them to move across, you know, and undertake journeys and see for yourself, So when the Quran is talking about the phenomena of the nature and the manner this universe is functioning, it invites us to believe, to understand that it's coming from a God, a creator, who is controlling the universe. He's mighty. He is providing us with all our needs. He is merciful. He is wise. How is it bringing forth this understanding, leading us to the conclusions? By drawing our attention towards the phenomena of the nature. So, for example, Quran would say that, are you being proud and arrogant? And do you think that we're not going to be able to recreate you, bring you back to life? Don't you know how you were born? This is what happened. This is where it all started from. And then you went through various different phases in the wombs of your mothers, and then you became a child, came out as a child, and so on. So, likewise, it talks about rainfall. It talks about the fertility of the soil resulting in plants, crops sprouting from the soil, and many more stars, moon, etc. That's right, their rotation. Now, what I'm trying to say is that this was mentioned in a book which was revealed 1400 plus years ago. The book was fully preserved. It couldn't be altered. It was memorized, I've already mentioned. And now, after the scientific revolution, the revolution of knowledge, so much more is known to human beings that those who belong to the earlier generations seem to be completely ignorant. That's what the understanding is. That what we know now today about the reality of this life is so much more that those who came before us, poor people, they had no understanding, no idea. This book was revealed centuries ago. And it's inviting you to have faith through the description of the phenomena of the nature. It's not a book of science, but it's describing the phenomena. The phenomena of the nature which has been investigated by the modern science, modern knowledge so deeply that whatever was known before has been challenged and has been declared as obsolete, unacceptable. Now, this book is claiming to be the book of God. If you were able to find a mention in this book which you can show is absolutely wrong, you know what? The claim of the book finishes. Imagine the risk the book takes by first challenging the first generation of the contemporaries of the addressees. Bring forth a surah like it, and the claim is gone. And for all times to come, the challenge is there that here's the book of God, It talks about the reality of this life. Because it is from God, it cannot say anything wrong. Wrong means wrong, absolutely rubbish, incorrect. Something that was described in the domain of science a century ago has actually been declared rubbish by the modern science because it was wrong. It was not properly understood. And here is a book which is not 1 century old, it's 1400 plus centuries old, right? And what it's saying is it's a book of God. And the way it is inviting you to understand and believe in is through drawing your attention to the reality of life. The reality, the phenomena that have been investigated thoroughly by the modern mind, modern research. And there are people who actually have undertaken the challenge of uh, examining the contents of the divine books, or the books that claim to have divine origins. One such investigation was undertaken by a French scientist, Maurice Bucaille. Now it's something like 50 years ago. To begin with, this scholar, a thorough scientist, was a non-Muslim, and he looked at the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran uh, from the point of view of the scientific facts that now are unchallengeable, and what is mentioned in the earlier books about the same facts. And the result of his investigation was in the form of a book, uh, the title of which is The Bible, the Quran, and Science. And he shows how the Old Testament and the New Testament have passages which cannot be accepted now, given the facts that have been discovered by the modern knowledge. And then he goes on to say that the Quran doesn't have any mention which I can point out to show that it's wrong. Right? So it's amazing. Uh, but probably not quite amazing for somebody who would know that this person later converted to Islam. So the famous conspiracy theory can be used by people to explain that this man was people invested in him. The Arabs, rich Arabs, they asked him to do it. I mean, people can say anything. So therefore, I present another scholar who never converted to Islam. Incidentally, he lived not very far from here. I still regret that the last time I came to Canada, I went to his city. I don't know why I could not meet him. I thought that I'll come again and meet him, but he passed away a couple of years ago. Pete L. Moore is his name. He lived in Cambridge. He was a professor of University of Toronto. He was an embryologist, somebody who would investigate the changes, the reality, the details of what takes place in the wombs of mothers, the process of human reproduction. He, when came across that the Quran mentions the process of childbirth in detail, and he read the book and did as best as he could to understand what the Quran is saying. He is reported to have made these claims very clearly that I am telling you as an expert in this field who has the latest knowledge of what is going through in the wombs of mothers. And I'm telling you, the Quran, what it says, has got no flaw, no fault. It is accurate. And I can't explain it except by acknowledging that it has divine origins. It cannot be done by a human. So there were people who, Muslims are fond of saying, why don't you become a Muslim? So he said that, I'm doing my job. Let me do my job. I'm telling you as a Christian that I am comfortable or whatever in my faith, but I'm telling you that your book is spot on. Somebody else asked him that, wait a minute. I mean, others can also come to you and bring their books, and you will investigate, and you will find similar amazing facts in their books as well. And he said, you know what? You don't understand what I'm saying. I am a famous person, and I have made some very famous remarks about the Quran. In the last few decades, nobody has come to me. Now, this is a Christian speaking. Nobody has come to me. So it's amazing. And I repeat, the Quran is not saying that, look here, ladies and gentlemen, here is a lecture on embryology, on chemistry, on physics. No, the Quran is sticking to its subject matter, guidance, and saying, you know how you came into being? You are being arrogant. Don't you know how you came about? This is where it started from. This is the process that you went through. And this is what happened. How can you deny that the one who did it with you for the first time would not be able to do it again? And yet, whatever was mentioned in this description cannot be faulted even today. Wow. How can it be explained? So somebody, a Muslim intellectual very rightly said that, look here, we are not surprised. We are not surprised because the Quran, we believe, is the word of God. And what science discovers, we're not talking about scientific theories. We're talking about facts. Whatever facts science discovers are the acts of God. God's words and his acts, deeds don't conflict. So we have no problem. It's quite understandable. What he says is what he exactly does. The two have to match. So this is another amazing aspect of the Quran, which today happens to be probably a more prominent uh, reason for many people to start taking the Quran seriously. I'm not very fond of the understanding that you have an inclination to start explaining the Quran scientifically. Quran is not a book of science. The Quran has to be understood the way it has been presented. We are not supposed to make the Quran appear attractive to people because of the way we think it is explaining some scientific theories. No, we don't have to do it. Let the Quran speak its its own message. Just try as best as you can to be its humble students and let the Quran do what only it itself can do.